Do part 2 of my February reading wrap up. This reading wrap up is probably going to be in 2 parts because I am filming it on the 26th and I still have 2 days left, but there's like a boss battle happening and just a bunch of other stuff. I also just had a week off from school, so I've been trying to just relax and enjoy myself and not really worrying about filming. So if you see me probably switch my outfit towards the end of this video, that is why. But I did want to say that I had a little bit of a weirder second half of the reading month. I tend to read a lot of romances in, February because of Valentine's Day, but I just sort of threw my TBR out the window a little bit, and I think it's going to cause me to have some punishments when I do my March TBR, which I'm going to film next, because I did not read everything I was planning. I very much was just sort of flying by the seat of my pants when I was reading these books, but overall, I did have a really, really good, enjoyable reading experience, and I just wanted to chat through the books that I have read. So the first book I read was not what I planned on reading, but the hold came off of my library, and it is Anderson Cooper's Dispatches from the Edge. So here's a photo of that. Half of the reason I picked up this book was just because I do love him as an anchor on CNN. I think he has such a fascinating life. So this was a book, I don't think I was expecting this book. It was sort of a mix of his, like, a memoir of his life, but also his early report of life. I thought it was very, very interesting. It wasn't exactly what I was expecting. It was more memoir than, like, dispatches, like, talking about his, like, it was a balance, but I wish it would have been a little bit more focused on his, like, you know, reporting career, I guess, but it was interesting. I did like it. I read it pretty quickly, and he's just a very, very good narrator as well. So I really did enjoy it. It was interesting. I learned a lot about his past and his family history, which I didn't know a lot about, so that was interesting, and I just liked how he wrote it. It was interesting. I want to check out the book that he and his mom wrote together before she passed away. Her mom's Gloria Vanderbilt. He also wrote another book about his family that came out recently that is also, again, on my TBR because I just think it's interesting. But I would want to. I don't really rate nonfiction. I liked it. I gave it 3 stars. It didn't wow me, but it wasn't. It was like an enjoyable read. It was fun. I like him so, and he just had a second baby, so that's maybe why I picked it up. And then the next physical book that I picked up was an e-arc, and that is the Bone Spindle. And here is a photo of that. This is a book that I'm a little bit conflicted on because I did like the concept overall. You basically follow these 3 characters. You follow one that is like a bookish treasure hunter, you follow one that is like a hired hit person, and then you follow this lost prince. And they're all sort of forced to work together to like save the day. It is LGBTQ+. I really did like all the characters, but the pacing of the book was a little bit off at points, and I felt like it was a little bit of like a meandering story. So it didn't feel like there was a lot of tension to the story, even though there was a lot happening, and I like that it sort of turned the Briar Rose myth on its head because Briar Rose was a boy. I like that. I also really did like all of the characters in the story. It just reminded me of sort of like a twisted fairy tale. Like that sort of it was like a story that sort of was loosely inspired by Sleeping Beauty, sort of turned on its head, and then you had these 2 really strong characters. It was a lot of action, a lot of adventure, but at the same exact point, as much as I like the characters, I didn't really feel connected to them. And I think that was something that I struggled with a little bit. But I liked it. I thought it was interesting. It was a fast paced adventure story that I really did wind up reading. I just felt like I needed a little bit more tension, and I think the world building needed to be a little bit more elaborated. But other than that, I liked it. I will definitely probably check out book 2 because I thought that book 1 was very, very interesting. Book 1 ended on sort of a cliffhanger, so I'm excited to see where book 2 goes. But I really liked it. I would probably give it like 4 stars for review. And then the next book that I picked up was another e-arc, and this is Tiger Honor by Yoon Ha Lee, which is the second book, the companion book in the Dragon Pearl series. So here's a photo. This book was really, really fun. I'll say that. Like, it was a space adventure. It was very LGBTQ+. It has to do with Korean mythology. This one really focused on tigers. The other one focused on fox spirits. But it's basically like, I would say this is really like more like a direct sequel to Dragon Pearl, but it just followed different characters. You do see the characters in book 1 and book 2, but I really liked it. I just liked the simplicity of this, like, it wasn't even a simplistic story, but just the simplicity of how the LGBTQ elements were represented in the story. I always say, like, that's how I wish all books were. Like, it's just like you read a book, there's LGBTQ plus characters, and that's just normal. And I just really like that. I also really, really like the myth elements to it. I really did like the characters. It had like an action adventure elements to it. It was a really, really quick read, one that I devoured. I wish I probably would have read Dragon Pearl right before it, but other than that, it was really, really fun, and I really hope we get more books following these characters because I really do like them. But it was a space adventure. I would definitely recommend you read Dragon Pearl before you read Tiger Honor. I read it because it's a podcast I'm listening to that's kind of going through all of Rick Riordan's backlist and the Rick Riordan Presents stories, and I had not read this one yet, but I really liked it. It just came out. Definitely a quick read. If you have kids that really like Star Wars, this would be a great starting point for them because I think it's a nice intro to science fiction in novelizations, but I really, really liked it, gave it 4 stars, and I'm excited to see, as always, what the Rick Riordan Present comes out next, but I'll definitely be keeping this series, and maybe even check out more stuff by Yoon Ha Lee, because I really like their writing style quite a bit. Books was like a really, really weird assortment of books, I will say that. But the first book that I picked up, I believe if I'm doing this in chronological order, is Dragon Ops by Mari Makuuzi. I really liked her Camelot Code series quite a bit. I thought it was a nice balance between Merlin, but video games. This is very much a video game story, and I really am not the biggest fan of video games, but I really wanted to read this to pass this on to my students. We are heading into middle grade March and May for me because there's a challenge I do every single May that has to be middle grade. But I liked it. I gave it 3 stars. I think it was very, very video game heavy, and for me as a reader, it didn't really interest me. But I will say, I think my kids will love this. This book will like go around my homeroom and everyone will read it and they'll really, really enjoy it. It's a little bit on the longer side. It was very, very action-packed, very, very adventure-focused. Character development really wasn't there. I thought that there were some elements that could have been expanded on, but I did like it. I thought it was a fun read, engaging. It was a quicker read, but I just didn't really feel anything for the characters. I don't even know if I'm going to check out the sequel, but I really do want to check out her new book that's a little bit more fantastical that's coming out from Little Brown in November. I'll definitely be checking out that one. This one, I think the kids will like. I just wasn't the biggest fan of it. But I wound up giving it 3 stars, and I think the kids will love it whenever I see them, probably next week. And then the next book that I wound up picking up was one that was on my Fablin TBR. Actually, this one was on my Fablin TBR too. This is really when I started panicking that I was gonna like not do my Fablin TBR, and I started to panic. So I like Bone Spindle worked for it, Tiger Honor worked for one as well. So there was a lot of books at the end of this month that I really just wanted to get my Fablin TBR done. So I picked up Lovely War, which is set in the perilous days of World War I and World War II. The gods held their fates and the hearts and hands and 4 mortals in their hands. I love this book. I gave this book 5 stars. I thought it was great. It's one of books that I just was not expecting. Haley and Buckland loved this book, I think 2 years ago. Maybe this year, I can't remember. But I really devoured it. I have a lot of books by Julie Berry on my TBR, but this book follows, so it's told in a really interesting format. It's told from the gods. You're told from Apollo's point of view, Hephaestus, Aphrodite, and Ares. And it's set after Hephaestus catches Aphrodite with Ares. And to sort of like prove herself, she's kind of telling these gods, and Apollo kind of gets involved, the love story of these 4 characters that meet during World War I. And you're sort of following them, and they're in like World War II. So they're like, that's why it's like a 2 timeline story. I love the structure of this story. I really, really did. I thought that it was ingenious to have the gods telling the story, especially because how like their specific focuses were really interesting. I have said this before, I'm not the biggest fan of war stories, but there was 4 point of views, so I think that it was not as war heavy as I was expecting. I also loved Aubrey and Colette's story. Aubrey is an African-American jazz singer or pianist that I just loved his point of view. I also really loved Colette, who's a Belgian orphan. It was delightful. You have 2 romances that you follow, but just the way that she structured it with the Greek gods as the narrators really drew me in. I read this in probably like 2 days, and it was a pretty long book. It was like almost 500 pages, but I loved it. I really want to check out more by Julie Berry, but this book was one that I really, really enjoyed, and another historical fiction book that I've read that just really like ticked a lot of boxes, and I definitely want to read more by Julie Berry in the future. But definitely a standout, one that I really, really enjoyed, and one that I'm happy that I finally picked up. Mostly thanks to Haley and Booklead, but also my family and TBR. And then the next book that I picked up was a redemption, and that is I picked up the Treacherous Curse by Diana Rayburn, which is the third book in the Veronica Speedwell series. I really struggled with the second book in this series, and I was like, oh, I don't know if this series is for me. I really, really love the first book. So what I did is I lessened my listening speed, so I wasn't listening to it as fast. And I really, really like this one. This one had a like an Egyptian element to it, and they were trying to basically solve the mystery of this man that goes missing along with this mummy artifact. And I really, really liked it. I love Veronica Speedwell. I haven't been reading a lot of historical romances this month, which is shocking to me. But I did read 2 of these, and I think my goal is to focus on this series before I head back to historical romances, because they're just really, really digestible. Especially when I'm doing grading, I can listen to them when I'm working, because we still are doing everything on Google Classroom, so I'm grading a lot more than I normally do, and I sometimes get a little bit like, I can't like work in silence, but I can work with audiobooks, so. But I liked it. I definitely would give this one like 3.75 stars. Definitely liked it more than I liked the second book in the series, and I actually just I just requested book 4, so I'll be reading that hopefully in March at some point. And then the next physical book that I wound up reading was actually one that I literally just bought, but I picked up The Maid by Nita Prose. I, again, really, really love this book. I thought it was really fun, but it's basically a catch on a cozy mystery, I would say. I do read cozy mysteries. This past year, I've read some really unique ones, and this one isn't one that I would think, again, is sort of on the unique element. But you basically follow this maid named Molly, and I would say she's definitely on the spectrum. That's, I think that's definitely obvious. She's on the spectrum when you read this book. But the book starts off with her. She's very, 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 very by the book. She's very, very obsessed with cleaning. Her grandma recently passed away, but she does. Even though her grandma passed away, there is an element to her grandma in this book that I thought was really, really ingenious. And she basically walks into a guest room and finds a man dead. And she basically becomes the prime suspect in the story because she really doesn't know how to, she has a hard time communicating with people, but she also has a hard time picking up on social cues. So it kind of puts her in a little bit of a bad situation, but I loved it. I love being in her head. It was a really quick read, and just one that I did not want to put down. I thought that it really focused on found family a lot and finding your people, and just it was great. I really loved it. I flew through it. I think it was a delightful read. And even though it was just a cozy read, it really just brought a smile to my face, especially the last 100 pages of this, how many people were going out of their way to protect Molly, and I just really, really loved it. It was great. I don't know if we're ever going to get more set in this world, but I love this character. I would read more by this character in any single day of the week because I think she's just really, really fun. There is a romance plot line, but it's definitely more about found family and more just connecting with other people and sort of solving this, basically not being, not being, I'm trying to think how to say this, not being the person that everyone expects you to be, but still having an existence. And I just thought it was really, really good. I really liked it. I gave it 5 stars. I was so happy that I picked it up. I probably should have waited and got it from Book of the Month because I bought it full price, but I think my friend Natalie will love this. So when I'm done with this and I see it next week, I'll probably give it to her. But gave this one 5 stars. If you're looking for a cozy mystery or something that's a little bit more heartfelt and heartwarming, I would definitely check it out. And then the next book that I picked up was one that I just finished yesterday, and that is The Book Wanderers by Anna James. I like this book, but sort of along with Dragon Ops, which I've also read, it really wasn't for me. And I think that the reason it wasn't for me is I didn't really feel as connected to the characters, but I will say that it had a really, really interesting concept. It reminded me of the newest Ghostwriter Reboot. But I liked it. I thought it was a fun story. I didn't feel as connected to the characters, but you basically follow this girl named Tilly, and she learns she has these magical powers where she can basically pull characters out of stories and go into stories. And she's also dealing with the disappearance of her mother. All of that sort of becomes entangled together as she sort of gets sucked into Anne of Green Gables and Alice in Wonderland, and she takes her best friend Oscar for the ride. It was cute. It wasn't my favorite, but it was cute. I will probably maybe check out the audiobook for book 2 and book 3 in this series, but it was adorable. It was cute. It just didn't wow me enough, but I liked it. And I've had this on my TBR for quite a bit. And then the last book I'm going to talk about in this little section is I also last night finished Goodbye, Stacey, Goodbye, which is the 11th book in the graphic novel series. Again, these books always make me so happy. They just do. This one focuses on Stacey potentially have to leave Storybrooke, Connecticut, Stony Brook High Middle School. She might have to leave, and it's just delightful. I really, really love it. I love the art style, and again, I say this in every single video I talk about this series. I was not a Babysitter's Club fan as a kid. I was a Little Sister fan. I should really go back and read the Little Sister graphic novels. I think that would be a really interesting experience, but I buy these and then I give these to my students because they also really, really love them. So I'm going to see you guys for when I'm done probably tomorrow. I'll probably wrap this up tomorrow. I think I'm just going to like pick a book tomorrow and read for the boss battle and see what the boss battle is. If the boss battle is like a couple of days, I might just wrap up this reading vlog or wrap up this section tonight if I know that like, oh, I have 4 days to read a book. But if I have like one day, I'm probably just gonna do it tomorrow. We'll see. But I'll see you guys for the end of this reading vlog whenever I wind up filming it. Bye, friends. Back. It's like about a week later. I got really sick in the first half of the week, and I just didn't really read anything. I didn't film anything. I literally haven't done anything. So I'm back to wrap up this reading vlog. The one thing I finished reading before I started feeling not the best was North and South, which is the next volume in the Avatar comics that I've been reading. So here's a photo of that. I really just like these books. Like, I think that they're so fun. These graphic, like, you know, seeing these graphic novels, seeing these characters again. I'm a big fan of Avatar: The Last Airbender. I watched it pretty recently, and I knew that once if you go into Korra, you, like, feel a little bit of whiplash because the characters change so dramatically. But I'm just loving seeing these characters again. I'm gonna be really heartbroken when, like, I have to move on because I still really, really enjoy these characters. I think I'll probably like Korra just as much, but I have a soft spot for Aang and his friends, so I'm just really liking this. This one was definitely more political, I will say that. This had Sokka and Katara going back to the Ice Nation and dealing with some more political stuff. I like how these comics do deal with a lot of the political ramifications of these series. I'm really, really enjoying it. This was the first book for the Avengers Reading Challenge that I was doing, which was for it was connected to WandaVision, but I really failed for most of that challenge, but this was the last one that I read, and then I started to not feel my best. So we will talk about the books I read for the rest of the challenge in March, where I'm still currently doing that. But I hope you guys like this reading wrap up, and I will talk to you soon for my next video. Bye, friends.